Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Craft Podcast, where Michael and I interview experts of various fields to learn about their disciplines and how they strive towards mastery. We love talking to people who are passionate enough to master something. And we've been asking curious questions of these craftspeople our whole lives. And it's a joy to share those conversations with all of you on the Craft Podcast. You'll love all the interviews, so please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Click the like button and leave a comment if there's anything you want to share. Let's get right into it. Michael, who's with us today?
All right. Today we are joined by Justin Scarpone, a strategic and operational executive with over 25 years of experience in leadership, production, marketing, and sales in the gaming and mobile industries. So he has worked for major companies like Disney and Scopely and managing their business in Asia and leading successful franchises like Disney, Samsung, and also Marvel Future Fight. And with his extensive network of regional contacts and fluency in Japanese, Justin excels at business development, negotiations, and also platform planning. Join us as we explore his passion for content and also technology and learn from his impressive track record of creative and also financial success. We're honored to have Justin on the show, and we look forward to diving into his insights and also experiences. Justin, welcome to the Craft Podcast.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate it. I'm pretty excited to be able to participate today, and thanks for your kind words. I look forward to getting into it a bit, talking about some games.
Yeah. So to kick things off, Justin, you don't look particularly Japanese, but you've worked in Japan for I think the bulk of or a lot of your career. How did you decide to learn Japanese and build a career in Japan?
Well, yeah, you did get me. I'm not originally from Japan. I grew up in the U.S. I actually found my way to Japan sort of by accident. I was part of when I was, I believe, 16 years old. When I was in high school, I was invited to be on a USA wrestling team that toured Japan. I was wrestling all through my schooling years, all the way through university. And so I was asked to come here, and this is in the mid 80s, I think 1986, around that time. And it was very much an eye opener for me to come to such what was for me a very foreign place and have no understanding of the culture or the language. This is obviously pre-internet, so it was not as easy to access information on Japan prior to visiting. So we spent the better part of 2 weeks touring the country and competing in various locations, and really changed me. So after the tour ended, I went back to the States, where I went to university and decided when I entered university that I would try my hand at Japanese, and ultimately majored in East Asian studies. And studied my junior year in Japan. I had a strong desire to live in Japan and see how much of the language I could learn. So my junior year, I studied abroad in Kyoto. And so it just it's one of those random things that, snowballed over time and became more and more of my passion and the focus of my studies and ultimately my career thereafter.
Wow. And that's the first introduction I've heard to Japanese culture via wrestling.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's pretty random.
But a pretty cool starting point. One of the things I've noticed about, I guess, the bulk of people who, maybe learn another language in college or in high school and go to a different country from where they grew up and stay for a while, they most people tend to go back to their home country, but you decided to kind of build an international career. How did you decide to do that, and what were kind of the challenges that you faced doing so, and how did you overcome them?
Well, it was when I first graduated university, my plan was to come back to Japan and work for a period of time. I think I had set the parameters of 3 to 5 years, and then said, and then I'll go get my MBA and move back to the States. But what I found was after that 5 years had passed, I actually took my GMATs and was scheduled to go to business school. I even had the business school lined up and was planning to move to London, actually, to go to business school. And an opportunity just presented itself to change jobs and join an internet startup in 1996. So I'm dating myself a bit. Dial-up days, fixed line only. It was brutal, but at the time, it was revolutionary. And so a friend of mine, a Japanese man, started a business right in my neighborhood and invited me to join and get in early. And that proved for me to be the ultimate business school. You learn fast when you have severe cash flow pressure. You learn how to do business development, sales. You learn how to fast track your product development. You learn how to manage teams and motivate teams out of necessity. You learn a lot of things that way. So I ultimately didn't go to business school. I went into the startup instead, and it kept me in Japan, in Asia. I did a couple years in Singapore, setting us up a subsidiary of our startup in Singapore. But ultimately, that opportunity and migrating my career to the internet kept me in Japan. And at that point, I just decided more to commit to the long haul.
Wow. And that was, I guess, a Japanese company, right? But I guess international operations, and you've also spent a lot of time working for international companies in Japan. So you've had to, through that process, I imagine, build a lot of trust across different cultures. Over time, like, what has been your approach to doing that? Building trust between local teams and an overseas headquarter. And also building trust with local teams when, you're not from the country where, most of the people on your team are from.
Right. Well, there's a lot of challenges there. When I first started my career, I was in a very large Japanese company. And when I'd go on business trips to other regions, be it North America or Southeast Asia, you would hear gripes about the headquarters and how the headquarters doesn't get it. And then
right.
Fast forward a decade, and I'm an executive in Disney Japan, and we would have our gripes about headquarters and how they don't do things, and that is just an understandable, very human way of seeing sort of the HQ versus subsidiary relationship. And when you're working cross border, it is challenging to build trust, even in a common language, because without that face-to-face relationship, it's not easy. And then couple that with time zones and language barriers, and obviously significant cultural differences. These are non-trivial things when you're building and leading teams to factor in, and to over time build in a skill set for, of managing and leading. And I think I can only speak in general terms, which is, I think what makes a great leader is pretty consistent, and much of regardless of culture, and much of what informs my perception of a good leader was informed during my 17 years in Disney, because I had a lot of exceptional bosses and received a lot of exposure to excellent people across all disciplines. And so my view on leadership is that, in general, the leader works for the team, the leader works for the partners, the leader works for the customers, and not the other way around. And so if you're a leader, I think you're doing yourself a favor if you, regardless of what country you're in, seeing your role is to take care of the people in your organization first and foremost. Your role is to take care of your customers, and your role is to take care of your business partners. Sometimes you need to represent your business partner's interests back to the headquarters, or to your boss, who may have a differing opinion from what you believe, and is in the best interests of the partnership. And so being a leader is complicated, but I think there's several sort of key things that you can, at least that I glean from my experience, that are important and have helped me in Japan. One is being very curious about individual team members' needs and business partners' needs. So that means when you're doing one-on-ones or having dinners with your partners, asking a lot of questions and trying to get at what's their motivation and how I can, as a leader, maximize their talents. If I get the most out of them and unlock their ambition and their sort of passion for what they do, it's going to help me, right? So asking a lot of questions to better understand them, as necessary, coach them, support them, and obviously learn from them. So I try to do that quite a bit, because ultimately it makes me a better leader, and it, pragmatically speaking, increases my probability for success. So I think being curious is really, really important. And the other word that, again, I picked up very much when I was at Disney, that is used quite a bit, is thoughtfulness. And I think in most Asian cultures, thoughtfulness is taken to a higher level. Paying attention is, certainly in Japan it is, and paying attention to detail, and that includes, expressions on a team member's face, or their posture in a meeting, or an off-the-cuff remark that they make that may have some deeper meaning, because things are not always so bluntly or directly stated in this culture as it is in some other cultures. And so being very thoughtful to follow up with people and ask them how things are going, but also following up with them to compliment them when they've done a good job, and let them know that you see what they're doing and that what they're doing matters. And again, ultimately, a motivated workforce is a very powerful thing, and you, as the leader, need to be very good at unlocking that. And again, then you represent their needs into the headquarters cross-border, and that too needs to be a constructive relationship. So you do need to get on a plane and go to headquarters and spend time with folks and understand their motivations in headquarters, and be a balanced representative of the company's needs back into your team. So it cannot be an antagonistic relationship. It has to be like something where you're, seeing both sides, and really trying to always work towards a sort of common direction, a path forward that people are comfortable with. And I think when you talk about like US to Asia, US to Japan, there's always ample risk that things will get misunderstood or not properly communicated. So you really need to work hard, be thoughtful about the details, and following up with people. I think that's always, in my case, it's served me well to work that way.
Yeah, a lot of great insights there. And I think that the one specific one that you pointed out that maybe isn't as obvious to people, I guess our audience is mostly English speakers who haven't worked in Asian cultures before, particularly East Asian cultures, is the kind of level of indirectness that is if Americans don't like something, you'll hear about it, pretty directly and often quickly. But a lot of times in East Asian cultures, you mentioned like a kind of an off the cuff remark or something said, in context of a bunch of other things in a meeting might actually have a deeper meaning. And it's not that anyone is trying to be indirect or trying not to express themselves. It's just the way that people express their views to maybe their boss is different than you tend to see in Western cultures.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously what you say is important, and how you say it is important, and also where you say it is important, right? If you're in a meeting room with 8 other people, you have to, and there's a particular team member you want to address in one degree or another, you have to think about what you say in front of those other 7 members, how they will view what you say. I had a boss in Disney, a great boss, who, when I first became a GM, he said to me, "You need to realize that now you're always on stage." And what he meant by being on stage was that whether you realize it or not, every comment you make is heard and interpreted by people, sometimes in ways you didn't intend, or you didn't realize. Maybe you're having a bad day and you make a comment that you really didn't mean, or maybe you meant it, but it's not something that you would ordinarily express, but you were tired, or you were in a bad mood, or
right.
you were worried about your kids' grades or whatever it was, and you had a moment of weakness, and you said something that you should not have, and then you spend the next 6 months trying to unwind that. And so, as a leader, you need to be very careful about what you say, and I think particularly in my experience in Asian territories, that's particularly the case, because one of the great strengths, I think, of folks in the U.S. is that they're very direct, very expressive, and but when they say something they don't necessarily mean, or they regret later on, they're also pretty direct and open about acknowledging that, and so which is a good quality. And I think that in at least in Japan, where I have the most experience, I'm comfortable in saying that it's harder to unwind something once you said it too. So you need to be careful about, making as few mistakes up front as you can. It's not that people won't forgive you, but it's just, it just is a little bit more subtle, I guess, communication, and therefore harder to take things back or minimize their impact after the fact. So you just need to be very thoughtful, again, to use that word, about what you say, how you say it, and where you say it.
Yeah. Thinking about those 3 together makes a big difference.
Yes.
I guess another thing that kind of came out in your comments is, to some extent, it sounds like it's less about trying to optimize for specific cultures. There are, rules of kind of being a good leader that brings different groups with different interests together. And a lot of the culture stuff, maybe I'm kind of projecting my own views here, so you could share your comments in a minute. But a lot of the cultural stuff is kind of a veneer over top of general human things that are going to be pretty stable to some extent in any environment that's bringing different people with different interests and backgrounds together.
I mean, I think this is right, and you, like, I've had the honor of managing people across Asia Pacific, right? People in, everywhere from like Thailand and Singapore and Taipei and Shanghai and Beijing and Seoul and obviously Tokyo, and so there are significant differences between folks, and it's not just language. Culture is a driving factor of that. But I think underlying to that is what is culturally agnostic is that people want to be treated with respect. They respond when you show a genuine interest and curiosity in what they're doing and who they are. And if you're thoughtful about how you engage with them and you represent their best interests, these tenets are culturally agnostic. Now, right. I am a pretty vocal, in my experiences in Disney and Scopely, I've been pretty vocal throughout my career about, hating the word global, because I think, frankly, the word global is usually used as another way of saying U.S. export in Disney. And, there, for example, in the gaming industry, I don't think you can name for me 5 really, truly, maybe not even 3 truly global game companies. There are no companies that I'm aware of that really addresses the different regions and cultures competitively, consistently. And there's a reason for that. And the world is a very big place and a very complex place. And I've been fine with that for a very long time. I prefer that and enjoy that. I don't think that the world's all gravitating to the same thing now. I think that's nonsense. But I think underneath the human sort of key tenets of being treated with respect and knowing that your boss cares about you and is curious about what you're up to and wants to understand you and feels obligated to take care of you. Those things are universal. Yeah.
Yeah. Great points.